Hi you all, Shelly here. Today I'm going to be talking about Sanctuary by William Faulkner. I came to read Sanctuary by William Faulkner as part of a group read for Faulkner in August. The wonderful hosts were Brian from Bookish, Noah from Everyone Who Reads It Must Converse, Crypto and Una from the Code X Cantina, Roz from Scalladillying Around the Books, and Alan from Big Hard Books and Classics. I am incredibly grateful to have read Sanctuary with such a wonderful and lively group. Our group, though those were our hosts, our group was much larger, and we talked to one another using Voxer, which is like a little chat texting service, essentially. Our chats have been extremely lively and are continuing to happen because we're still in the middle of reading this novel. But I finished this a few days ago, and so I wanted to get a review of this book up while the book was fresh in my mind. Again, I wanted to emphasize how grateful I am to have been a part of such a wonderful, intelligent, and thoughtful group for my first Faulkner read. So, Sanctuary. Sanctuary was written, well, rather published in 1931. This is a brutal novel set in the Deep South. And here's the premise. Imagine you are a young girl, beautiful to behold. One of those types of ladies who, when you walk down the street, everyone's heads turn because your beauty is just that capturing. Your name is Temple Drake, and you live in the Deep South. You've recently gone on a date with a self-proclaimed Southern gentleman named Gowan Stevens, and you have made plans to go to a baseball game with Gowan the next day. Gowan shows up late to your second date, and he shows up a little bit drunk. And putting your better judgment aside, you decide to get in the car and ride with him to the baseball game anyways. Gowan decides that he wants a little bit more moonshine before you all get to the baseball game. And on the way to get this moonshine, you all get in a car wreck. Through a series of events, you and Gowan end up in a house in the middle of nowhere with a cast full of menacing characters. And this begins one of the most terrifying times of your life. So that was my summary of the plot, essentially. But Faulkner being Faulkner doesn't tell this story linearly. He also has a rather large cast of characters. One could probably argue that a number of other characters were more prominent or more focused on than Temple Drake. I just decided to create my summary around Temple Drake because most of the action and most of the tension happens around her character. Again, Faulkner being Faulkner, I've only heard, this is my first Faulkner novel, and I've heard many things about his writing, and in many ways he doesn't disappoint. The novel is very vivid and very visceral. He has a way of describing things in Sanctuary where the reader feels immersed in the scene. The sounds and sights that Faulkner describes are absolutely not poignant, but they're alive. I had another word in mind, but that's the one I'm gonna say. They're alive. They jump off the page. Many times when I was reading a scene, the scenes were almost felt like they were around me, and I was set in the middle of that scene, seeing and smelling and hearing the things that Faulkner was describing. And that was wonderful. And many times, the book is extremely quick paced. So having said that the scenes were coming alive, this was both the best part of the novel, but it was also the worst part of the novel. As I mentioned before, Sanctuary is a brutal, brutal story that seems to grovel in human suffering. And when you put a novel that is extremely brutal and gratuitously violent paired with extremely vivid writing, the combination gives one a sense of anxiety, a sense of terror, or upcoming menace. And that was something that Faulkner was very easily built when one was reading. So as I was reading, this sense of terror would creep up through my stomach and then sit in my chest as I was anxiously awaiting for something to happen. And something indeed happens. I'm not going to spoil it here, but I am going to say that if you are sensitive to extreme violence and brutality amongst humans to other humans, this book is not for you. Now, when I was reading this, the first thing that I could connect Sanctuary to in regards to other media was Twin Peaks. Twin Peaks by David Lynch, which was a show that came out, I believe, in the 90s, which also has themes of young women in precarious situations and a growing sense of menace. Both of them have grotesque characters, and again, this really strong sense that something is bad, something bad is looming, something bad is just around the corner, and that it's going to come out and grab you or shock you when it does come, because you're sort of waiting for this terror to unfold. That was what I connected it to, but there were characters in Twin Peaks that I really liked and I really connected with and that I enjoyed. And I cannot say the same for Sanctuary. Now, when I finished reading the novel, I went back and I watched a bunch of videos, all of which I will link down below, including the hosts. But one of them was Noah from Everyone Who Reads It Must Converse. He put up a video about his thoughts and reactions on Sanctuary. And the two creative people that he was able to connect this book to was Quentin Tarantino and Chuck Palahniuk. I believe I'm saying that correct. The author of Fight Club, among other novels. And when Noah said this, something clicked with me. I am not a Quentin Tarantino fan and actually avoid watching his movies because I know that he is known for shock value over-the-top violence, which is not something that I want to allow in my life. Also, I have friends who have read Chuck Palahniuk, and again, I know that he is known for writing shock value over-the-top violent books. And when Noah said that, I realized that this book, Sanctuary, is not written for a reader like me. Someone who is a little bit sensitive, who doesn't like gratuitous violence, and I'm someone who actually stopped watching Game of Thrones because of its gratuitous violence and sex. It's just something that isn't to my taste, and that, again, I don't really want to allow into my life because it does affect me. So you might be thinking, Shelly, why did you continue to read Sanctuary even though there was this growing sense of menace and terror? And that's easy. My answer was because it's William Faulkner. Faulkner has won the Pulitzer Prize twice for his novels. I have friends in real life who say that Faulkner is one of their favorite writers and that he writes challenging and interesting things set in the Deep South. The Deep South as a place that I'm always trying to get to know better and to read more about. So the reason why I kept going with Sanctuary, even though I was warned by Hannah from Hannah's Books that this book was very violent and disturbing, I kept reading because I thought William Faulkner would surely not let me down. My camera cut out just at the right moment when I was giving you my final thought, or one of my final thoughts. And I would say if you are a sensitive reader, if you don't like gratuitous violence, and if brutality does bother you, please, please avoid this novel. It's one of those novels and experiences that I could say, I read it so you didn't have to. And I would say that pick up something else as a first novel from Faulkner. So where am I gonna go from now with William Faulkner? I would say that I need a bit of a break. I need to not read something by him, though I'm not completely, my opinion isn't fully formed since this is my first novel that I've read of him. I do plan on likely picking up Faulkner in the future, but I'm definitely going to maybe ask around about warnings of brutality or talk to some friends about some of the themes, because if I would have known, though I did know part of the way through, that this book was something that sat in human suffering and was this violent, I may have hesitated with Faulkner. But again, I went in with the hope of being impressed by Faulkner's writing. And unfortunately, this was really, really disappointing. And I say that with a smile because, you know, it's sort of like I've heard so many great things, and I'm sort of surprised that my first Faulkner experience was not good at all. This book is really also outside of Faulkner's normal wheelhouse, meaning that Faulkner writes challenging and intellectually stimulating things. That's often what I hear about Faulkner's writing. And Sanctuary wasn't that. It was pretty simple and relatively quick-paced. I didn't have to reread hardly anything, and the plot just sort of moved right along, even though it was nonlinear. Now, I would say that if you are a huge fan of Quentin Tarantino, if you love books that push shock value, and that's all about just exploring the brutality of humanity, this is definitely the book for you. Also, if you are a William Faulkner completist, if you want to read every single thing that William Faulkner ever wrote, again, this might be for you. But if you are anybody else on the spectrum of readers, please avoid this novel. You will save your heart a lot of trouble, and you will probably save yourself a few nights of sleep. Actually, when I first finished the book, I was trying to put my thoughts into a one-sentence review, and the sentence that I came up with was, "I'd burn this vile, evil book if I hadn't borrowed it from the library." And that was my one-sentence review of Sanctuary. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for listening to my thoughts on Sanctuary. I really appreciate your time. I hope that this was helpful. And I want to hear your experiences with either William Faulkner or any of the other creative minds that I mentioned. I would like to know, what do you think? Does this fall into your wheelhouse of reading? Is this something that you would normally pick up? And let me know if this was helpful in any way. Anyhow, thank you so much for being here. I look forward to your comments below, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye, guys.